Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm taking you to the Master League, where a trainer is absolutely flame cooking the Master League meta with a level 50 Shadow Heatran. Now, these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community. Unfortunately, I'm unable to pronounce their name, but many thanks for the battle submission, and I will have their name listed on the side of the move graphic. Now, Shadow Heatran, it's definitely more of a pick for fun than for climbing. The moveset is Fire Spin, Legacy Magma Storm, and Stone Edge. But with the Shadow Heatran, its damage output neutrally is pretty terrifying. So without further ado, let's hop into it, and we see a pretty nice lead in game number 1, Xerneas into Reshiram. Opponent safe switches into a Duskmane, and that's a decision they're soon to regret, as out comes Shadow Heatran. Shadow Heatran gonna be no shielding as Duskmane fires off Dark Pulse. That does do some pretty substantial damage to the Heatran. Heatran can now look to secure the knockout with Magma Storm. Magma Storm gets shielded, the opponent trying to make a play for a switch advantage, but Heatran's just never going to let that happen. Heatran shields up the Dark Pulse, going to get a full farm down and exit with quite a lot of energy. If the opponent brings back in their lead, which was the Reshiram, which they do, then Heatran will actually survive to get the Stone Edge. This is a Shadow Stone Edge, devastating damage onto Reshiram. Reshiram gets the farm down, but the damage is done. In comes Xerneas, opponent reveals that they were double steal as they have Zacian in the back. They're hoping that Zacian will be able to sweep with Heatran out of the way, but unfortunately there's more super effective damage for their Zacian as Reshiram is revealed to be the final Pokemon. Reshiram no shields as Zacian goes for the close combat. There's no fast move pressure here, and Zacian's going to have to shield anyway, so the cheaper move is going to be the best move to go for here for the Zacian. Now, the Zacian will have the ability to catch. Their switch timer should be up momentarily, so that's what the game comes down to. Will they get the catch? No, they do not. They stay on the field anticipating the Reshiram to overfarm, but Reshiram just threw instantly, and that's going to seal it. Their Reshiram makes the last second charge attack on 1 HP, but it's just too little, too late. Fusion Flare takes the knockout, 1 Geomancy from Xerneas. And that game 1 really felt like the Shadow Heatran show. Shadow Heatran almost took 2 knockouts on its own. Hopping into game number 2, Xerneas into Groudon. Very good to catch this Groudon on the lead. Xerneas will be double resisting the Dragon Tails, and with no fast move pressure, even though Precipice Blades is an exceedingly efficient attack, Precipice Blades cannot one-shot. The backline here of Reshiram and Heatran would get absolutely eviscerated by Groudon, so very happy to catch this on the lead. Precipice Blades is going to land. Oh my goodness, tried for the Fire Punch catch, but the opponent is just too patient. Reshiram Sage Switch going to be answered with Primarina, but Primarina is not an answer to Reshiram. Reshiram is just too strong neutrally. Stone Edge lands, and just like that, Primarina's the one who's actually in quite a bit of trouble. Primarina now going to have to shield up a resistant Fusion Flare. Primarina's typing is strong, but unfortunately its stats are terrible in the Master League, and that's part of why Primarina usage at high elo has dropped off considerably, because there's just better options. If you want a Fairy type, you're going to go for Xerneas, or you're going to go for the ever-present Zacian. Primarina, unfortunately, just can't really keep up. Speaking of keeping up, this Heatran has to go from 2 shields to 0 as in comes Groudon. Groudon able to force the final shield, but this Heatran is very, very healthy. They're going to be switch locked whatever they bring in. They're not going to be able to pivot out. It's going to be, oh my goodness, I thought that was a Xerneas, but it's a Florges. So the opponent, unfortunately, it looks like they may be running more of a free-to-play team. And this Florges, even though it can hit for super effective with Chilling Water, it's just not going to be enough damage. Heatran will be able to survive. So Heatran hangs on, makes it to the Magma Storm. There is still some energy available on that Xerneas. Magma Storm is shielded. There's the pivot into Xerneas. Xerneas gets the close combat. Opponent makes a nice catch onto Primarina, but Florges is going to have to try and Fairy Wind down. And this is the Master League. Pokemon are just simply too bulky here. Xerneas makes close combat number 2, knocking out the Florges and securing the win. If either one of those Fairy types were the more meta Xerneas, then maybe that game has a different result, but luckily they were not, so the game will end in a win. Xerneas into Kyogre in the next match. Kyogre at a pacing disadvantage here. Xerneas just going to be firing off the Moonblast as soon as it gets it. Moonblast is going to inflict some pretty sizable damage onto Kyogre, so Kyogre puts up the shield. Xerneas should be able to hang on here to a Surf. Surf will not take the knockout, but an Origin Pulse definitely will. That's a bit scary. In comes Reshiram. Reshiram answered with Primarina, but we've already established this is just simply not an answer to Reshiram. Reshiram is too strong neutrally. The stat product difference is just way too much for Primarina to keep up. Primarina will fire off the Hydro Cannon, and Reshiram realizes if this is the switch-in, then they're pretty weak. So Reshiram's more than happy to shield up, look to threaten a knockout with the resistant Fusion Flare. Because if the opponent no-shielded a neutral move, they're probably not going to want to shield the resisted one. Back in comes Kyogre. Kyogre, if they want to, they can shield and farm all the way down, and that would be a big problem for Shadow Heatran. But no, they end up no-shielding. Kyogre barely hangs on, and it's Xerneas versus Heatran in the endgame. Heatran is up a turn, so Heatran will fire off the Magma Storm to deny their sneak, and now this game will come down to a CMP tie. Heatran should be winning the CMP tie. It is a very close CMP tie, though. Close combat is shielded, but no, Heatran lost it. Oh, the 14 attack! The 14 attack backfires, but Heatran says it simply does not matter. Heatran hangs on, very low HP, knocks out the Xerneas. Reshiram snipes down the Kyogre. That was a roller coaster of an endgame, but it all ends well with a win. Hopping into the next match, and unfortunately, this game is just an auto loss. Basically, anytime you see a Rhyperior with this team is just going to lose, as Rhyperior can just double shield its way through the entire team. Opponent tries for a fancy close combat catch onto Lunala. Xerneas went for the Moonblast, but even avoiding that triple resisted catch, I just still think the game's over. Barring the opponent making a colossal error, which would be shielding something that isn't the Rhyperior, Rhyperior is just going to be able to degen through this entire team. Rhyperior already has 70 energy banked. They are loaded on this Rhyperior. Fusion Flare takes the knockout, and in comes the Rhyperior. Rhyperior exits with 100 energy. This is such a problem. Back in comes the Xerneas. They go 20 energy over the cap. And unfortunately, it's a Shadow Rhyperior. It's just simply not going to matter. Shadow Rhyperior going to be double shielding more than likely as Xerneas fires off the Moonblast. And then this poor Heatran is about to get destroyed. Xerneas makes the last second close combat. Maybe there's a chance. Maybe they let it go, but it's a Shadow Rhyperior player. They're just going to double shield the Shadow Rhyperior. In comes the Heatran. And this poor Heatran is just getting eaten alive by Mudslaps. Rhyperior is on superpower. Back-to-back superpowers loaded. That's going to be so long. Good night to the Heatran. Heatran gets KO'd. And unfortunately, we got to realize from the start, Shadow Rhyperior just a complete auto loss for this team. Hopping into the next match, hoping for a better match than the last one. Not a good lead, but at the very least, not a Shadow Rhyperior. Safe switch into Reshiram is going to be answered with Palkia. If the Stone Edge lands, then suddenly things get quite interesting. Stone Edge is going to be no-shielded, and now potentially Reshiram has the ability, if it wants to just farm down and flip switch advantage. So Reshiram is going to be shielding up the Aqua Tail. Dragon Breath goes through, taking the knockout. Opponent reveals they have Kyurem in the back as their final Pokemon. Kyurem going to be shielding up. Kyurem, these Shadow Claws doing basically nothing. They're going to have to throw, because if they don't, another Fusion Flare could be reached. So they fire off the Fusion Bolt to secure the knockout, but now they're stuck with Xerneas on this Kyurem. And Xerneas is more than happy to absorb whatever they throw, because this should only be a Fusion Bolt if I'm not mistaken. Fusion Bolt is going to land. There's the pivot into Zacian, and Zacian is answered with the Shadow Heatran. The Shadow Heatran's fire spins are adding up quite considerably. The opponent has to be very careful and overfarm to the back-to-back close combats before firing off energy. At this point, Xerneas is the win con, so Heatran will be sacrificed to the close combat because Xerneas is very close to the back-to-back CCs. And once the back-to-back close combats are reached, the game's over. There's nothing the opponent can do. A catch won't save them because the Kyurem's getting knocked out by a close combat as well. So Xerneas fires off close combat number 1. Down goes the Zacian, going for close combat number 2 into the Kyurem. And back-to-back KOs for the Xerneas. Flipping switch advantage in that mid-game was absolutely everything. We move to the next game, Xerneas into Dialga, and this is a pretty nice matchup for the Xerneas. Xerneas will have a pacing advantage, but no, instead opting to pivot out and sending in the Reshiram. Because even though Xerneas does do pretty well into Dialga, Heatran would obviously be the preferred matchup. Fusion Flare is going to land. Dialga overfarms quite massively. Roar of Time will easily take the knockout. Reshiram calling the bait. No shields the Iron Head. And in comes Dawnwing's Necrozma. Dawnwing's Necrozma, if they fear the crunch, they will potentially put up the shield, and they do. Dawnwings would love nothing more than a full farm down, and that's exactly what they get. That could be a big problem. In comes Heatran. Very poor charge stack timing there from the opponent as they end up throwing 2 in the move. It is going to be the Moongeist. And these fire spins are absolutely shredding. They do not look neutral. Shadow Heatran, very, very oppressive. Magma Storm lands. That's going to set up the farm down for Heatran. Heatran now exits with quite a lot of residual energy as back in comes the Dialga. If they're bringing in Dialga, how weak are they to Heatran? What could they possibly have in the back? The Iron Head will be shielded in the back. Oh no, it's ABA Steel, it's Zacian, and Zacian's about to get cooked alive. Magma Storm gets shielded, but Heatran is just too far ahead. There's another Magma Storm locked and loaded. Zacian gets rocked, and this poor Zacian, it just didn't even get a single charge attack. Everything gets farmed down by Heatran to secure the win. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty bad lead Xerneas into Ho-Oh. Xerneas is completely walled the safe switch into Reshiram. Reshiram gets a huge energy head start and is answered with Dialga. So far, the opponent is ABA weak to Heatran's energy. It might be too much to ask for them to be AAA weak, because triple weak doesn't happen super often, but it would definitely be helpful. Reshiram makes a second Fusion Flare. That's very nice damage onto Dialga. The Reshiram's just going to let itself get KO'd as Dialga fires off Roar of Time. Trying to get farm with Xerneas here would be tough, so it's actually going to be Heatran getting brought in. Heatran, oh my goodness, just missed the farm down by 1 HP. Dialga goes for the Iron Head, and the opponent actually brings in Ho-Oh. They might actually be triple weak. Could it be something like Zacian crowned in the back? Stone Edge shielded up by the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh gonna be spamming out Sacred Fire, hoping for debuffs, but would a debuff even save them from a double super effective Stone Edge? We're going to find out. They did get the debuff. Incinerate goes through as Heatran gets the Stone Edge number 2. Stone Edge into the Ho-Oh is going to land, taking the knockout. In comes Zacian. Does Zacian get the farm down? No, it does not. Shadow Heatran refusing to get KO'd, makes the Magma Storm, and that's going to seal it as in comes Xerneas. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We move to the next match, Xerneas leading into Palkia. Xerneas finally back to winning a lead. Opponent safe switches into Ho-Oh, and in my eyes, this is just a strict misplay. Now, obviously, I don't know what they have in the back, but if you are leading weak to Xerneas and you lead into a Xerneas, safe switching Ho-Oh won't accomplish anything for you realistically, because any Xerneas lead is going to have good answers to Ho-Oh in the back. You're far better off safe switching your third and instead trying to fight for switch advantage, even if you have to go down shields, because then at the very minimum you would have the ability to wall off the Xerneas with Ho-Oh later. Reshiram goes for a very ill-advised Fusion Flare bait, and that's going to cost them as that basically did no damage. It was double resisted. Palkia is going to be going for the Aqua Tail. It does not take the knockout. Now Reshiram will make it to Fusion Flare number 2. The opponent's been counting. They know this is just the flare, but they have not. They end up putting up the shield. In comes Xerneas. In the back is Dialga. I do think they would have been better off safe switching Dialga into this team than Ho-Oh. Obviously, this team has a Shadow Heatran on it, so it has a pretty good answer to Dialga either way. But safe switching the Ho-Oh really didn't generate any kind of advantage for them, and the Xerneas is still going to be able to sweep. Roar of Time is going to land. That's going to set up a farm down for the Dialga, but this just gives free energy to the Xerneas. Xerneas will always be shielding up because outside of Iron Head, the opponent just can't really damage this Pokemon. So Xerneas does get the farm down, back in comes the Palkia, and Xerneas can just fully Geomancy down and secure the win. We move to the next match, leading Xerneas into Lunala. Now, this is a matchup that I always prefer to be the Lunala, so I don't mind the switch out here, because Xerneas does kind of end up getting bullied by Lunala neutrally. Reshiram going to be spamming out Fusion Flares with lightning fast pacing, and the opponent does end up respecting the crunch. Now, Reshiram not going to get KO'd by any one move, so Reshiram is going to be no shielding. Reshiram will be able to outpace. Opponent tries for a Fusion Flare catch, but good patience, as now Reshiram gets to connect with the significantly harder hitting Stone Edge. Stone Edge lands, Primarina gets the farm down, in comes Xerneas. Xerneas more than happy to absorb damage from the Primarina, and could even potentially look to pivot into the Heatran and go for a one-shield Fire Spin farm down. Looks like Xerneas is just going to stay in, taking quite a lot of damage, farming up to 100. Could have knocked out with a close combat to save just a little bit of residual energy. Moonblast takes the KO. In the back is Ho-Oh. And hold on, this game might be winnable. Ho-Oh is up on energy, but Heatran does have the superior pacing. Heatran farming up, full send into Stone Edge. It connects, down goes Ho-Oh, and that's going to be a win. Back in comes Lunala, but the damage is done. Lunala throwing on alignment and giving free fire spins to a Shadow Heatran is not what you want to do. Shadow Heatran, very good charge stack timing, throwing one fire spin in the move. Now Heatran on its next move is just going to look to throw instantly, but the opponent knows they messed up, no shield to that Stone Edge, and they will just let it go. Hopping into the final match, picking up a bit of a negative lead, Xerneas into Zamazenta. Safe switch into Reshiram, answered with Palkia, and up energy. Reshiram can make life very uncomfortable here. Ideally, you would love nothing more than to try and win switch advantage, and landing a Stone Edge will achieve exactly that. Now Reshiram has a very safe one shield farm down. The opponent, they're only making one move, so they will be full sending the Spatial Rend. They're going to reveal Keldeo as their next Pokemon, and Keldeo is actually a wall to this Reshiram moveset. However, Fusion Flare will still add up. Keldeo could make life quite uncomfortable here. Oh no, did Keldeo end up CMP tying? That would be a catastrophic error if so, and they did. A tragic miscount from the opponent, And if they had thrown just slightly sooner, they would have been in a significantly better spot. But now, it just looks like this game is going to be over. In comes Xerneas. Xerneas more than happy to farm down Keldeo. Aqua Jet does quite a lot of damage, and Zamazenta is about to get shredded alive by these fire spins. Will Zamazenta force on the close combat, or will they go for the Behemoth Bash? They do go for the Behemoth Bash, but it's just too little, too late. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, these were some very fun battles, so many thanks for the battle submission. Shadow Heatran's damage output was honestly quite impressive. Now, Shadow Heatran, it's anti-meta for a reason in the Master League, and that big reason is due to its lack of flexibility. It can absolutely shut down Pokemon like Zacian. Having Stone Edge for Ho and Reshiram is a big plus, but if it ever gets aligned onto something like a Palkia, that matchup is just so catastrophic that it's more or less an auto loss. And we saw that one Rhyperior game. If it ever gets onto a Rhyperior, it's getting absolutely deleted as well. So it's a very fun anti-meta Pokemon, specifically with the Shadow. The Shadow's damage output was very impressive because Fire Spin, it's not the greatest fast move ever. So getting that little bit of extra fast move pressure when you're in a Master League filled with very bulky Pokemon can be a very big help neutrally. As there was quite a few games where it was able to farm down, exit with energy, and that energy was exceedingly threatening. For a lot of anti-meta mons, I like to do the thought experiment of trying to figure out if there was a move update that they could get that would potentially move them more into meta contention. But with that Fire Steel typing and with there being a pretty sizable water presence in the meta, basically entirely revolving around Palkia, unless Palkia ever disappears at some point, I think it'll be a little bit tough for Heatran. Maybe if Heatran got more of a neutral typing as a fast move, where we're still able to have good energy generation and spam out the Magma Storms and the Stone Edges, but it would at least have an ability to hit Pokemon like Palkia, the dragons, for neutral damage. That could be something that could help it, but I haven't really looked at what it could learn in the main series. Whether it could learn something like a Shadow Claw or something like that, that would at least still give it neutral damage into steals, but make it so that it's not completely helpless when it comes to fast move pressure against the many, many dragons of the Master League. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.